Welcome to day 2 of this programming adventure. So I made a couple fixes, hopefully upgrades. I set my Big Mac's resolution to 1080 instead of the 2.5K or whatever it is. So it should be easier to read things on the screen now. So yeah, I also boosted the gain on my microphone. So it should be a bit louder because I'm not trying to edit these clips. I'm just trying to upload them. So let's just get into it. So yesterday we left off with that one fix we did. So next is this refactoring X logic for the player, so that we can make the ostrich slow to a stop instead of just stopping abruptly, which is what we have now. It's like if we stop, it stops like on that frame, but we want it to kind of skid into a stop. So yesterday we did like 4 lines of code in the 50 minutes or whatever. So I'm hoping today will be a little bit better than that. But also it's like, if we make progress, we make progress. So any progress is good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the numbers because it's like I have the values correct for the speeds, but I have to implement them differently with DX instead of this player speed thing I was thinking of. So I'm just going to calculate what these speeds are because they're correct. So I just want to make sure I can recreate that. I'm going to grab a pencil real quick here. So it looks like every speed tier gets whatever the default speed is multiplied by the slow scale multiplied by the second speed. So since slow scale is 0.3, so if there's 1, player 2, player 3. Okay. And then speed 1. Yeah. So players 1 is player speed times 0.3 for the slow scale, but then the other ones are also multiplied by player 1 speed. And I guess my idea with player 1 speed was just like, instead of a magic number, to just give it like a default speed, and then if I wanted to speed it up, I would just change that first player speed and everything else kind of scales off that. But I'm not convinced that's the way to do it now. So I'm just going to see what the calculator tells me is the and the values of these. So speed 1 is about 0.39. Speed 2 is about 1.702. 1.3 times 0.3. Then there's 1.17 for speed 3. 1.755 for speed 4. And 2.34 for speed 5. So that looks like it goes up by like 0.4, then 0.4, and then 0.5, and then another 0.5-ish. I don't know. So it's almost gradual. So yeah, all of this player speed, I'm gonna kind of refactor. So in Lua, you can chunk out a block of code like this for coding or for commenting. And the cool thing is, if you put a third dash here at the beginning, you can kind of toggle that whole block back on, which is nice. But I'm gonna write what these numbers ended up being, which is 0.39, and then 0.702, and then 1.17, and then 1.755. 2.34 max speed. Okay, so instead of, like for the moving right here, I'm saying in speed or whatever tier it's in. If, like, let's say it's in speed tier 3, then player 1's X gets its current X. And then look at this. Added by its player speed, and then the slow scale, and then the slower, or then the speed 3. Which all of that numbers cracks down into these numbers. So like I can just multiply or add adding this amount instead of those 3 values each time. So I guess since we commented out this player speed, let's all of this player speed, let me see. So anything with player speed or player speed through 5, which is all of these, will no longer work now because, and this is just, I'm still new to programming, so part of me wants to just keep the old code there so I can see what it used to be, so I can add, or I can easily see what I was doing to get it to work appropriately. Because the thing is, it's like it was working fine, all the speeds were pretty accurate, it was just the stopping that I couldn't figure out. And if I simplify all that code into like a dx sort of variable, then if the speed tier is greater than, speed tier 2, and the input on the keyboard is the opposite of the direction they're facing, then instead of setting its X to be constant, which it currently is, it just stops, I would set it to slowly go down to 0 so that it kind of skids to a stop. So there's the moving left. Let's do the moving right. If I can get this skidding feature done in one session here, that would be amazing. Okay. And then in a previous update, I had it like I initially kind of wanted to just make like a PvP joust instead of the normal joust, but I don't think that's as interesting after playing the original joust a bit more. So, and I think it's more interesting to work on the AI than just copy the same code for two different players. So trying to figure out how to make, enemy AI ostriches, I think would be cool. Okay. So we've got this player speed. I kind of want to see what the difference is between these speed tiers. To see if there's any constant factor I can kind of increase the DX by as we increase the tier speed. Another thing I got to figure out is in the original game, or at least in the emulator, if you hold right key, for example, it'll ramp up and fairly fastly get to that top speed. So you can like start sprinting by holding the button instead of click, 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 click to get all the way to speed tier 5. So that's probably next on the list once I figure out the stopping. Okay. It's amazing the amount of like resistance I have to start this from scratch again, even though it's not that difficult. So I guess let's see where I do the speed tier right here. So this is where I increment the speed tier. And at least that's for when I'm going to the left. When I'm going to the right, this is where I increment the speed tier. And it gets incremented if the player is already facing right and then the right arrow key was pressed and the speed tier is smaller than 5. So I guess because, if it's speed tier 5, we don't want to increment the speed tier, but you can still press right and we don't really want anything to change because that's how the game is. So okay. So if that's where we're incrementing the speed tier, yeah, we would want to do here. I'm gonna see what the difference is between each of these and see if there's any consistent looking value emerging. So if you add 0.312, you get to the next tier. And then so yeah, I guess it is not linear. Let me see this. 1.755 minus 1.17. Yeah, so it's kind of scaling as I kind of expected. But we can, we can just kind of tether these numbers to the speed tier. So I'm not worried that this isn't neat and pretty. 2, 3, 4 minus 1.755. Did I do that right? So it looks like these. Let me see. Okay, so it looks like I somehow made it. And I don't know if this is game accurate, but these last two speeds are kind of the same, but I don't think we're not gonna make this multiplier into a variable because it's just not consistent, even though these last two are. But it's kind of nice to visualize that. So let's see. And that's the other thing. All of this player one speed and whatnot shouldn't even be in the play state initializing function. It should be in the player class. So you know what? I'm just deleting that. So let us go to, yeah, here we go. See, and this is where dy is, so it only makes sense. Dx is also here. Initially, we should set its dx to 0, just like its dy. And then I guess it's like it looks like in a previous model I had the player's speed controlled here in the update function of the player, which I should have continued, I think. I don't know why I put it in the play state. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why I ended up doing that. Oh, and you know what? The sounds. Let me see. I thought of another thing. Okay, so yeah. I mean, I broke some of that stuff, but what I was trying to prove is that the footsteps continue even when I'm in the air. The sound does, so that's another thing I gotta fix. Only play footstep sound while not grounded. Oh, I guess while grounded. So that's another thing to fix. So I guess part of me feels like most of this code that's currently in the play state should be shifted to the player class. But I'm trying to think of if that's gonna break it if I shift everything all at once or whatever. I think for now, let's just see. I'll leave the speed tier increment and everything in the play state for now. And the looping, but what I will do is move that all start this logic with DX inside the player class. And if that works, I can start to migrate those other things like the looping and the tier incrementing into the player one class as well. Okay. So if we start with DX0 as it spawns, start self dot speed tier at 0 when it starts. So the incrementing should still work fine for the speed tier. So in this update function, we just need to start to add the DX logic. You know what? I'm gonna take all of this just so I can see what I implemented. Not player 2 moving right, player 1 moving right. Right here. Okay. So what I did was I have it separated by either moving left or moving right, and how I determined whether or not the player was moving left was if the speed tier is greater than 0, which comes down to the other logic where I said if it's facing right and right is pressed, increment speed tier, that sort of deal. So like if it's in a speed tier, that means the direction it was facing was pressed, that means it should start walking. So as long as speed tier is greater than 0 and it's facing left, then if it's speed tier 1, get the modify x by subtracting the tier 1 speed. Then if it's speed 2, and then okay, that's like really simple. So self.speed tier, and then player 1.speed tier. So the biggest difference between the code for this stuff is if this is in the play state, if this sort of code is in the play state, I have to tell it player 1.speed tier because player 1 is the instantiation of the class object. But in the class object, I would just say self. So it has its own values, and then I would reference those values. Since there's only going to be one instantiation of player 1, which, let me see if I Do I do that in the play state? I think I do. Yeah, right here. This code right here, player one with the parentheses, that's me instantiating the player one class, which player one and then the parentheses, just like this, player one and then parentheses, and it takes in those parameters. So yeah, instead of player1.x and whatnot, it would just be self.x. Even though it's kind of the same thing, because there's only going to be one, but I just have to do it like that. So let's try this. I basically had the right logic. I mean, it was the right logic, it was working. So if self.speedTier is greater than 0, and not self.facing right, then if self.speedTier is equal to 1, then do something. Should look at that, we're already coding more than we did last episode. Gosh. The other thing we'll have to do is, instead of drawing I was probably drawing, well, let's see. Right now it's just drawing a rectangle at its x and its y and its width and its height. Okay. So yeah, we might be able to do this fairly easily. Is 4. And then instead of saying if speed tier is 5, since the speed tier increment logic won't let it go past 5, and these first if statements only execute if it's greater than 0, I don't need to say if it's equal to 5, because otherwise or else it will be equal to 5, so we don't need to be redundant and ask that question. So self.x will get its current x, and moving left, that means we're going to minus the whatever value I calculated up above there. Self x gets its current x moved to the left by whatever that value was. Self.x gets its own current x shifted by, and then self.x gets so it in code they often say don't repeat yourself. But I'm not sure how to do this otherwise. So it's just a learning process. But anyways, it's not exactly repeating because what goes in these parentheses, it's going to be different. And as far as I know, there's no shorthand to say a variable gets its own variable and then shifted by a certain number. So I don't know. Excuse me. So what this line of code says, it checks if it's facing left, and if it is, and the speed tier is greater than 0, meaning left was pressed while it was facing left, then it'll check the speed tier. If it's speed tier 1, it gets shifted by the speed tier 1 value. So I guess in the original code, I took its current x, shifted it by whatever the speed times the slow scale was, which is this number. So I should be okay to just plug these numbers in. But since I could just plug those numbers in, or I can just give myself variables that are these numbers. So yeah, what I'm going to do is, actually, yeah. I do think I should do like see, I don't think that should be a self-speed sort of thing. I think it should be a global, well, shoot. So in Lua, so what I'm thinking is like I just want variables, right? I just want variables to be equal. Like speed 1 is this, speed 2 is this, speed 3 is this. I guess I can just define those variables not in terms of self, but just define them. Let me see. Yeah, let me see if it'll let me do that. So speed 1 is a variable that gets so the tricky thing with this is like I don't know if this will interpret correctly or just crash before I try it, because I mean I should be able to just declare variables locally in this player 1 class, right? I should be able to. Maybe just I'll just round them out to be, you know, a little nicer looking. So maybe this is just 0.7. And this is 0.4. And this is 1.2. That doesn't really matter. I mean, it'll change the speed. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I should. Whatever. We'll see if that's close. So now the thing is, I'm not exactly sure if I can just call variables like that within the init function. Because, in like C, you got to do the prototype at the top so the compiler knows, but Lua is an interpreted language, so maybe we don't have that problem. Let's see. So then, speed tier 1 gets shifted by speed 1. This gets speed 2. And instead of, because other players or other, ostrich objects might need these same speeds, now since they're variables, I don't have to go digging around for them, digging for the magic numbers, but I can just plug in that. Let's see if I can't believe that loaded actually. So that's speed 1, speed 2, speed 3, speed 4, speed 5. Now just to make sure this is going like I assume it is, like making sure this line of code is operating, I'm going to double this speed 5 to like 5. Let me just see if that makes it super fast. Is that faster? Shoot. Yeah, and then right is still busted. Okay. So yeah, it looks like I can do that speed or variable declaration in the init function. Oh, but see, I was just talking about, oh, well, you know what? No, we can do. So I was thinking that we needed dx, but the speed, these speed variables are basically its dx. So what we can do, well, shoot. So the reason I thought to do the dx was because we would update its x position like this. We would update its x position based off its dx, which we are doing. But then where do we put the slowdown? The braking system. Well, so right now, the braking system that's busted, I mean, it just stops completely, doesn't slow down, is right here, where I'm saying, if it's facing left and you press right, speed tier gets 0. But what I need to do, instead of setting it to 0, I need to set it to, I need to do similar logic where I say like player 1's .x gets its current x, or I would say, shoot. So I would update its x position to be its current x position plus its dx or minus its dx, whatever direction it's facing, but then have that dx slowly get to 0, which okay. So for example, this is if left is pressed and I'm facing right, meaning I'd probably add one more because the thing is the brakes in speed tier 1, the brakes work like they stop right away. But then if you're at speed tier 2 or above, it kind of skids to a stop. So I would add another thing saying and speed tier is greater than 0 or whatever. I wouldn't set speed tier to 0 just yet. I would only set, shoot. Yeah, how would I do this? Because we would need to set speed tier to 0 so that we can turn around. Because that's how we check. Unless, if we had a DX thing, we could say something like if DX is 0 and, whatever direction is being pressed, that's how you decide where it's facing. But is there a way to do this without DX? Or should I just have gone with DX? This is a tricky one. Let me implement the other player 1 moving right here. Then I can start futzing around with the brakes. So speed tier greater than 0 and it's facing right, then increment this, and instead of the minus it'd be a plus to shift it right. So now at least we should have a similar working left and right. Still no braking systems, but yeah, or skid to a stop system. Okay. So I guess my biggest concern was right here. I would need to set it to 0 by the time its X no longer is changing. Because I want it to skid to a stop before you can input a turn. And I don't want to, since, maybe I can set a flag or something to indicate that it should be skidding, and at that point, take its current DX, which is gonna be, holy crap. Wow, this is tough, guys. Oh, it was in the player class. Duh. Yeah, see, so right now its X position is solely governed by its speed tier, which, if we add that flag like should be braking or not, we can say this and not braking, then abide by these rules. But if it is braking, then we need to take its current DX, which depends on its speed tier, and then slowly or fastly take that down to 0. Which we can do by something like subtracting delta time or something. Yeah. I'm gonna say that's the way to do it, which is to set a flag for I'm going to set a member skid to equal false. At which point I need to say when it's skidding, which is there should be brakes for player 1, brakes left and right. Okay. I'm going to put, this is when we would want to do player 1 dot skid gets true. And then I need these brakes closer to the other ones. So brakes when facing left. So the other way, if right was pressed and it's facing left, then player 1 dot skid gets true. So the idea behind this flag is now in the player class, we can say, and not facing right, and not. So if that's skid, so then I guess we would need to add, like if its speed tier is greater than 1, because it just stops at speed tier 1. It doesn't do the skidding. So if it's greater than 1 and facing left, and the flag is set, then implement the skidding, which depends on its speed tier. So for now, so if its speed tier is 1, then update its x to be its current x. So we want this value to get smaller until it's 0. So we can do something like, hold on. Let me just see if the self skid is kind of working. Oh, see, but then we need to reset skid to false once its dx is 0, which we need to test for so that we can reset that flag. So if its speed tier is greater than 1 and facing left, on a sec. The skid only needs to happen when, the button is pressed. The button of its opposite facing direction is pressed, which is right here. So yeah, skid true. So if it is skid true, okay. Let me see. I feel like we do need to do DX for some reason. Yeah, let's just do DX because this is basically DX anyway. So if we're starting DX, we would say its DX gets its current X position shifted by. So we need to do one more step here, which is we need to say that is this in the update? Yeah. We need to basically this where we're saying like, oh shoot, hold on. So see like this, self.y gets its y plus its dy. So we need to say something like self dx gets shoot. It's confusing, guys. We need to say just like this, where it's like its current y modified by its dy. So self.x gets its current x shifted by its dx, right? And then we can slowly change that dx to 0 if the skidding flag is true, but we also need to do the opposite, like if that if self is facing right, then its x needs to be its current x shifted positively by the dx, and else its x gets its current x minus self.dx. Yeah, so now what that gives us, wait. So what that gives us is now x is being shifted according to its dx. Well, according to its current position and its velocity, which is good because then we can, well, let's see if it even works. So the flag, the skid flag is what's screwing us, I'm pretty sure. So we still need to reset the self.skid to false once we've hit 0. So right here breaks, So right here, we'll say player one dx will get its current dx minus, let's just say 0.5 to see if that'll work. But we want the dx to be, we want to return the lowest number. Oh, no, we would want to do shit. So yeah, player 1 dx is going to be a positive number, right? Yeah, dx should be a positive number. Well, fuck, I don't know. Let me just try this. So we want to return the higher of the number because we want it to clamp to 0. So subtract 5 from dx until it's lower than 0, and then just return 0. And then we say if player1.dx is equal to 0, then that's when we set the flag of skid to false because it's done skidding. So that's only breaks when facing right. So let me see if, well, one thing that'll help me troubleshoot this is my debugging notes, where I can say .skid, and in Lua this dot is the to concatenate two different strings. So we would need to convert the player1 dot skid boolean to a string before we can concatenate it. But we also want to print out the dx. So same deal. Concatenate to string the player1.dx. Let me just see if the dx is working in any way I imagined it would. So dx is 0. dx isn't even changing. Holy shit. What a mess. Okay, so dx isn't even changing. Which we should have it changing right here where, oh, you know what? Oh, shoot. It's confusing, man. I think the mistake is right here, where it's like, we're not, its x gets its current x shifted by its dx. Wow. This is hard. Oh, well. This might help. Okay. So now I'm making sure when I'm moving right, I'm doing the right dx adjustment. I guess, yeah. See, so velocity shouldn't be tied to its current x position. It should just be whatever its change in x position is. So that might help. Because we're still setting x to itself, shifted by the dx down here, depending on which direction it's facing. So we should be okay to just assign dx to be the change in x, whether it be negative or positive. That's up for this line of code to distinguish. And then the skidding, something similar like, greater than 2, 1, so that's skid. If it's 2, then dx gets, see, this should be totally different. It shouldn't be based on its x position, it should be based on its dx. Okay. So yeah, we would want to do this where we'd want to do that math.min. Where do we do that? Did we do that? We did it here. We said it's dx. See, yeah, I don't think that's right. But so we need to reset skid to false when dx is 0, but let me just, so if it's right here. Oh, see, yeah, we need these breaks to be in the player. So the thing is, when I put, oh my god, if I refactor these breaks logic, and honestly probably the speed tier logic, over to the player class, as long as I put it in the update function of the player class, then this line of code where I say player 1 update delta time, it'll run all that code. So I can move all this code over to the player class, which is where it probably should live. But I've got to change all this. Which, there's got to be a better way of doing this, but I don't want to accidentally change stuff that isn't supposed to be changed. So we still need to reset the skid by checking its dx. And then we still need to hope you guys can read this better this time around, and that audio is a bit louder. So what was I doing here? See, the skid and the brakes need to be basically put in the same place. Skid and brakes. So if okay, so this is turning, this is incrementing speed. Where's the corresponding? Wow. So where's that speed increment for when I'm facing the other direction? Is that still in play state? Yeah. This needs to be over there too. Preferably in the same spot. Nope. Oh, really? Shoot. Okay, cut. Paste. Okay. Yeah, look at all this commented out code here in this play state. We'll clean that up later. I have no idea how real games end up getting developed. Like, even something this simple is already like, you know, getting out of hand. Because it's like I'm looking at this stuff. I wrote all this code and I'm like, what the heck am I looking at? But this okay. So this skid to stop needs to be put, you know, in the brakes. Let me just wrap my head around this. So we don't want to set this to 0. Well, actually we can say, well, fine. Okay. Yeah, we don't want to set that to 0 because we don't want it to just turn to 0, which is what that code makes it do. Like its X position just be wherever it currently is. We want it to skid to a stop. So instead of speed tier gets 0, we want to set self skid to true, and then here, let me and here we can say, shoot. We can get rid of this. Because this will just be yeah, this should only be called once because until skid gets reset, left won't do anything. So we're going to say if its speed tier is greater than 1 and it's facing left. Is that right? Oh my god, when facing. Let's do. Oh, see, well, this is redundant. We don't need this because we asked it up here. So we can say if left is pressed and it's facing right, and self dot speed tier is smaller than 2, meaning it's 0 or 1, then instead of changing skid to true, we're going to say self speed tier gets 0. So that'll be the brakes, not the skid. But yeah, else if, you know, I'm still learning, guys. Just bear with me. I'm going to say else if left is pressed and it was facing right. And oh, here, yeah, this is wrong. Smaller than 2. And then we want to say greater than or equal to 2, because speed 0, 1, 0, no. Just greater than 1, I guess. Then we need to skid to stop. Then, if it's greater than, oh, see, and we can't do that. We want to do if speed tier is here, yeah. Oh. Else. Okay. Holy shit, okay. So right here, this is saying, you know, if the brakes are applied by pressing left, meaning I'm going right, and the speed tier is smaller than 2, meaning 0 or 1, then set its speed tier to 0, which will stop it from moving. Else if left is pressed and facing right, so same conditions, but speed tier is greater than 1, either 2, 3, 4. See, is there? So, okay, so there's, yeah, getting confused because there's like a speed tier 0 and then all the way through speed tier 5, but there's only 5 speeds. So here, so this will be the skidding math. Okay, so I just lost my place and got really confused. So this brakes when facing right, and there's also DX gets the speed tier. That should be right. Where's that line where I get self x gets dx right here. So this one, so we still need to set skid to 0. Wow, this is crazy. This is crazy. How do, yeah, gosh. Okay. Oh. Okay, so we'll need to do brakes when facing left after we figure out brakes facing right. But for now, speed tier gets 0 if you hit brakes and you're in speed tier 0 or 1, which is accurate. And then we need to update dx to be the bigger number between so I think I need to say something. Oh, shoot, man. Because this should only get called... Motherfucker. This will only get called once. So this dx logic I'm thinking of needs to be... Oh my god. So the problem is, if we update dx to get smaller over time until it's 0, the problem is this line of code only activates one time once I press the left while it's facing right. Which will not accomplish what I'm trying to do. So we just need to set the skid here. And then elsewhere in the update, we need to say if it's skid, take its current speed tier and slowly turn that to 0. And until that's 0, or, turn it to 0. Once it's 0, reset the skid. So I think that's what we need to do. We need to just say that this is the skid flag. And we're going to say none of this just yet. We're just going to say if left was pressed and it was in a skid tier, meaning 2, 3, 4, or 5, then we're going to set skid to true. And then we would want to do, something similar here where we're saying and not facing right and self dot speed tier smaller than 2, then set its speed tier to 0 and just stop. Else if right is pressed and not facing right and speed 2 is greater than 1. That's better. So we have the setting skid flag, but we need to implement it in terms of its DX and whatnot. I'm going to say I think it's right here. I think we need to do the logic here. But we need to change this because this is just saying, hey, period, you're updating x by itself dx, but that's not the case. We need to update that. We need to do that if it's not skidding. Otherwise, if we're skidding, then we need to move it to 0. And then once dx hits 0, then set skid to false. So oh my god, yeah. Okay, I think I need to separate this out. Shoot. This is tough. This is very tough. I think I need to say update player X right velocity and then update player left velocity instead of kind of combining them there. So else if self dot facing right and self skid, then see, this needs to be, well, that needs to be here. And so if it's facing right and self skid is true, then we need to update its x by a number which is correlates to whatever speed tier it's in, and that number needs to go to 0 over time. Fuck. Let me see. Do I do tx gets the speed tier? Its current dx is gonna be set to whatever its speed tier is. So we need to set speed tier to 0 once dx gets to 0 and once we reset the flag for skid. So we would say holy crap, you guys. Almost there, I think. If it's facing right and it's not skidding, then update its x by its normal. So do I set to speed tier 0 as soon as the brakes are hit? I only do if it's smaller than if it's speed tier 0 or 1. So that's good. So I need to set speed tier to 0 only when dx hits 0 once the skidding is done. So its x gets its current x plus itself dx. See, this is where we need that. Min math.max. Oh, see, but we need to update dx. We need to say self dx gets its current dx. This is where we would do the math.max. Self dx minus, let's say, 1, I don't know. So we're going to say dx gets dx minus 1. Unless it's a negative number, then it's 0. Then if self dx is equal to 0, then we need to do two things. We need to set its self speed tier equal to 0. Oh, and see, this I already messed up. Self skid, this needs to be here because self skid is true. So if it's facing right and skid is activated, then dx gets dx minus 1, which that's actually probably way too high. Let me just do like a 0.1 or something. Then if dx is equal to 0, set its speed tier to 0 and set its skid to false because it's done skidding. Then we need to do, if it's facing right and it's not self-skid, then we just need to say self.x gets its current x plus its velocity. And then if it's not facing right and it's not skidding, then its x needs to be shifted, in the opposite direction of the x. Then else if, holy crap, you guys. Else if self, or else if not self dot facing right and so this line of code is saying, if it's not skidding, then just give it its leftward velocity. However, if it's facing left and it is skidding, then we need to do what we did for the other one, which is set its dx to clamp at 0. Otherwise, actually, wait. Self dx. Oh yeah, we want it to clamp to 0 still. Because dx, no, we do want it to clamp to 0, but we want math.min because self dx will be being added to slow it down because it's facing the other way. So math.min for the other direction. Then if self dx is equal to 0, we need to do two things, which is set speed tier equal to 0, as well as set self.skid to be false. So let's see if dx is looking like it's correct. 0.4. So the number should be higher on every tier, which it is. Now, I saw dx go to 0, but it kind of did it. Oh, no. Yeah. No, that's almost right. Like it goes. So there's a couple of good things here. It looks like the skid flag is working how I wanted it to. Except for moving left. But moving right, skid flag seems to be working. So why does skid getting true not be working right now when moving to the left? Keyboard is right. And not facing right. Speed 2 is greater than 1. I don't know why that's not working. The good news is some of that worked, and it's not completely broken. I guess I don't get why. If keyboard was pressed right, and it was facing left, and speed 2 is greater than 1, then self-skid gets true. But then we set it to false. So maybe this... Oh, wait. Let me just see what that does if I do that. Let me just... Nope. So yeah, skid is not getting turned to true when I'm moving left for whatever reason. And it should be... I mean, I've got it, the same logic, like where I'm saying if the button was pressed and it's facing the right direction and its speed tier is less than 2, then if it was pressed and it's facing left and speed tier is greater than 1, skid flag gets true. So maybe it's just turning back to false just really fast. So let me just see if I turn off this block of code, if skid would be set to true when I'm facing right. Let's see if I can't track that down. Track that bug down. Yeah. So it does get set to true by that logic. So there's something faulty in the reset logic that is just setting skid equal to false right away, which we want it. Gets self dx x minus its self dx. Okay. If it's facing left and skid, then dx gets So dx is going to be a positive number. Always. So I think we still want... math.max. Then if it's 0, then set it to speed 20. Let me see if that fixes our skid problem. Okay. So yeah, it looks like the skid value flag is working as expected, but it's just not updating its X position during that skid. Time. You know, like, so the flags are working right, but its X position you know what? Yeah. We just, oh my God. Holy crap, you guys. Well, I am very happy it worked that much and that I didn't have to like refactor a bunch of stuff. So here, instead of that huge number that skid is printing out, I'm just going to print out to decimal point to 2 places for that skid. But what we need to do is we need to find where we're updating the player's X position. Let me just see. Self.x. See, so we need something like this, where we need to say, you know, do the dx stuff, but then set its X to be its current X, shifted by that dx, just like above, except that time when it gets to 0, you know, set it to reset the skid flag. So I think that might actually fix it, but we'll see. Self.x gets its X shifted by its velocity. And let's see if that does a little skid for us. Oh! Yes! And I messed up. Dude, that's that, and that... Wow. I messed up the float. But that worked. Here, what did I do? Oh, here. String format. So I need to say, hey, format this string with accuracy to 2 decimal places. Oh no. String. And then string dot format. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's not skid. Yeah, that's the wrong one. I wanted to do dx. So you're good. You're good, skid, just like the way you are. But I need to format dx by that. Let me see if that fixes it. Okay. You know, fun stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So I just didn't want. Oh my, that's sick. So in the game, it goes like a little screech sound. So maybe I'll slow the skid down just a little bit. Which I was right. Remember, I changed it. I had it at like 0.5 or something, and I was like, no, it should be like 0.1. And I think even 0.1 is too fast, so it's like needs to be a 0.05 or something. Okay, where is that? That's probably in here. Yeah. Instead of 0.1, slow down by 0.05, and this way you don't use magic numbers because you gotta change it twice, but we can refactor that into a variable. Yeah, that's too slow. So then we can add the little screech sound, you know. And then if I'm just in tier 1, it stops, which is game accurate. Then if I'm in tier 2, it basically stops. Tier 3. Yeah, it does a little skid. I think, is that really? It's looking like speed tier 2 doesn't skid at all. But if it's better, if it's greater than 1. Okay, I mean it should be. It's just because the velocity is so slow, it doesn't show much skidding. But we did it. I can't believe we did that in one session. Next thing to do. So I did refactor this. I did do it with DX after all. And I did make it slow to a stop with skid. I still need to do the speed ramp when you hold it, but that's okay. And we also need to add skid sound. So what's great about the logic here is like we can control find self.skid gets true. So that's when it's set. So if skid flag true gets set, then we can play the sound, which in Lua is like right here. So it's going to be sounds. It's sounds with a string key, you know. So what we could do is like a template, find that skid true, and we can say like, hey, this is where sounds.skid needs to be played. And then same with right here. We can say, hey, once we add this sound called skid, we will then play it. And that would require going into this main right here. So we need to make the MP3 file, import it as an audio source, give it the key of a string so we can access it, and then we can play it. But let me make sure we don't have any glaring bugs either with like So I guess one thing to check next time is if skidding works in the air. Or if it does something different for the air logic, so we can make sure that's consistent with the original. Then we can add the skid sound. Then we can... So yeah, it looks like next time we'll do a couple different smaller fixes, like the footstep only when grounded, adding the skid sound, and then... Yeah. But hey, that was a big success. I was like... Honestly, that feature was the one that kind of stopped me working on this project for a little while, because I thought just the thought of refactoring all the X position code and turning it into DX and then figuring out how to implement the skid and stuff, my brain was kind of short circuiting. But wasn't that bad. Thanks to you guys being here, letting me talk through it. So, what we do once we're done, git diff runs, shows all the code that I've added or taken away since the last commit. Oh, it looks like it. I don't know what those M's mean, but it looks like it's not so happy I moved so much stuff. I don't know. So I'll call that a successful day of programming, and I'll git add. Well, let me see. So git status shows me what's different, and it shows that I modified both the play state and the player one, which is right. So I'll add those two to the staging area. Then I will git commit with a message saying implemented skid to stop for speed tiers 2 and above. So yeah, since I refactored a lot of the play state into the player one class, it shows that I had like 79 deletions, which 79 of those insertions are those 79 deletions because I moved some stuff around. So it looks like I did a huge big commit, but it was really just whatever. Well, I don't, that's plenty. That was a good session. So now that I've committed, I will git push original joust. And by the way, if you want to play this game or any iteration of it, you can. If you go to love2d.org, you can download, you can either git clone my repository, or you can literally download, the folder itself. So if you go to github.com/Jakobins/joust, you can go here and download the zip of the folder. And then what you can do with Lua is just drag the folder itself. So Lua, in order to run, it needs a main, which is this Lua, main.lua. So if the folder you download, once you unzip it, has that main inside it, you drag and drop the folder right onto Love2D here, and it'll run for you. So you can actually play any of my commits of this game on any of the branches, because Git is just that cool and it lets you do that. But anyways, I just pushed those changes. And what's cool is like you can see that under, even online on the remote repo, you could see that the last commit was implementing the skid to stop for those yeah. So anyway, you can play that if you want, and like I said, it's just Love 2D, and you download it. It's open source, and then once it's on there, you can. I have it set up. I had to do a little something extra for Mac to run it here like this, love dot, but like love dot, since I'm in the directory with a main.lua file, love dot will run it. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so glad that. And if I spam the other side, it has to skid to a stop before it goes the other way. So that's pretty great. So yeah, git commit. I get pushed all of that. So another successful session. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. And feel free to keep watching or whatever. I'm having fun with this, and this helped me a lot. This helps me stay focused for that whole session. So catch you later.